Okay, so last time we did a fabric texture for the actual couch. Now I want to do one for the wall. And I'm going to keep it simple, but I'm going to do, once again, a 1024 by 1024. RGB, always 72 pixels per inch. I'm just going to create that with a white background. And it did artboard, that's okay. That's all right. So what I'm going to do is I want to make all I need is for the wall is just a bump to give it a little bit of texture so it's just not ridiculously smooth and slick. So what I want to do is I'm going to go into my filters. There's a few ways of doing this. I'm going to go to a noise. Oh, of course I have to fill it first. Alt, backspace, and actually that has color in it. There we go. So it's filled with white. The layer's filled with white. I didn't want an artboard, but it's okay. Let's go to noise. And if I don't want it too radical, I could just say uniform. And just kind of crank that up a little bit. Or just right around there. If I hit Control plus, we can zoom in and see that. So right now we're getting into like what the texture is going to be. I'm not going to keep it like this. And if I want there to be a little more texture to it, I'm going to use a Gaussian. And what I'll do with this, check this out. So I've got, let's say I did do a Gaussian. So we can have a little bit of texture. And I'm going to do, speaking of Gaussian, I'm going to do a Gaussian blur. And I'm going to blur it out a little bit more than that. So we're getting this effect here. And this will be nice for a bump map. So it's subtle, but I don't really need heavy. It's a wall, you know, and that'll work out nice. One thing I do want to do before I get out of there is I do want to go in and do my filter other offset. And remember, half the resolution. And yes, we do have a seam that we don't want. Just going to use the spot healing. Just to get rid of that pattern going down the middle. Yep, looks like I got rid of it. I'll do a filter other offset again. And if I'm worried, I can always do my levels and just give it a little bit of extra contrast because I can always adjust the intensity inside of Maya. So let's say we just had this. File, save as, save this out as a targa, and we will call this one wall bump 2 because I already made one previously. Now, my wall is not UV mapped, so we need to do something about that. This is pretty easy to do, and since I know I'm doing a tiling texture, life is going to be pretty simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly UV map this guy. I'm just going to go in. Let's isolate it so I can see only my walls and my floor. And first, let's get rid of you. And let's make it so that we can actually see things a little bit easier. There we go. So I'm going to grab the floor. I'm in face mode. Oh, good grief, stop that. I'm in face mode and I'm just selecting floor right there, and I'm going to hit Shift period to grow the selection. And make sure to get this little piece right in here. Shift select that. And this is a good time to whip out the old texturing tool. So show UV toolkit. I'm just going to stick it right over here. Actually, where'd you go? Let's try that again. There you are. All right, so the floor, I'm just going to planar map on the Y. So that's done. Now remember, left mouse button, if it's by default, it's X. Middle mouse button is Y, and right mouse button is Z. If I want to pull up the options, Shift left mouse, I have keep image height ratio turned on, and I'll just set this to X and close, but yeah. I'll do the same for the top. Select that, Shift period. Just grow the selection so I have the whole ceiling. I'll worry about the interior. I'm not too worried about that because we won't be looking up that much. I'll take care of that later, but I'll do the same thing. Planar map on the top. One thing I do need to worry about with that is the fact that it's the reverse. So if I hit 5, we could see it shaded. The red parts means that these are flipped UVs, so I just want to use my flip. Boop. And then I'll cut this stuff out later. I'm more worried about the walls right now. So here's a quick, easy way of doing the walls. I'm just going to go and grab the walls themselves. Okay. So I've got all the walls. And the quick way of mapping this is I'm going to cylindrical map it. So I'm just going to go here. Boop. And that does this. And I know it sounds weird, but I'm wrapping it as a cylinder around there. And now I can go in and decide what I want to do with these insets that I have. And that's where some of these tools come in. So if I go and use my 3D cut tool, which I don't see on here, so I guess we'll have to add it. UVs, 3D cut and sew, Control Shift left mouse, pops it up here, and a middle mouse drag it into here. So now it's in there. And now I could see the different UV shells. And I'm just going to make my cuts. And I'm just basically cutting so that this stuff will unfold properly. I'll do the same here. And I can see it's acting weird again. Now we can drag like to different edges with using this tool. But the other thing I can do is I can literally just go in and select the edges that I want and then just go in and cut them. So if I select this guy here, I can see where my cuts are. Got all these corners, got those. Cool. So now, were I to go in, let's just go by shell and select this shell. Whoops. Jinkies. That's not supposed to be there. How did that get there? I'll fix the ceiling later. There we go. I want those cuts in a corner, not in the middle of a wall. So never mind this, we'll fix that. When first things first, we select these are the walls. Unfold, bam. And what we'll see, check that out. Nice, clean, going through all the walls. Walls are done. Grab this guy, which is the ceiling. Now, what's happening is it's having some issues just because of some of the curves and stuff that are there, but that's not a big whoop. Because all I got to do is make my cuts so that this is separated better. So I'm going to grab let's try that. You know what, actually, let's use this guy here. I'm just curious. Sometimes it's just fun to do trial and error and just see what happens. See if we can get one of those Bob Ross happy mistakes I keep hearing about. And actually, that's better. That's better. That should be separated. Now we're cooking. There we go. So let's just see what happens when I grab these and then I say optimize, and we see that how it unwraps everything. See that? Now, once again, nobody's going to really see the ceiling that much, but now I have just about everything UV mapped. The only difference is there's different densities of textures for everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, actually, I'm going to cut let's say this wall right down the middle and cut that. And you'll see why in a second. So I've broken it up so they're equal parts. I'm going to grab all my UVs because they all need to have the same texture consistency. And I'm going to go down to where it says range layout, shift left mouse button to bring up the properties. And this is the important part. Make sure, I'm going to tell it to lay it out in the 0 to 1 space. Pre-scaling, preserve 3D ratios. So that way they'll be consistent. It won't be super dense here and super light here. It'll be all the same. And I want to do some frame padding. Not that I need it because they're all going to be tiled anyway, but we'll just do that. Then hit Layout UVs. And as I zoom in, check it out. They're all compacted in there, and all of my squares are consistently the same size. Okay. So, if I'm very anal, I could go in and say, man, I don't like how some of these are, all janky and rotated and stuff like that. And I could actually take something and kind of move some stuff around so that they line up a little bit better. I also have, like, this one looks like there's a little warp to it. So I can go into my optimize tool and that straightens things out quite nicely. See? So let's say I just leave it like that. That looks pretty good. I like that. Everything is compacted. There's no overlapping. And now I can apply my materials.